Just popped up and said join Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
Frenzy trying to like get all that stuff.
I know how it happens.
Yeah, and I told Missy, she's like, it's never happened. It's never happened before.
Are we ready?
It will happen again.
Call the meeting to order. If you stand for the pledge of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you remain standing, we'll have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us. We thank you for each of these folks that have taken the time out of their busy day to come out and meet with us. Lord, I just pray that you'll be with our first responders and our military as they're in harm's way right now. Watch over them, protect them, and bring them all home safely. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Amen. You may be seated.
Speak of the devil. Oh, we can start now.
Now we can start.
I'm glad everybody helped for me.
We did.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad you're here because you need to be here for this part. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 4th?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 4th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5 affirmative. And the special meeting on March 27th.
I approve. Second.
Motion by Chad, second by John Purdy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5 affirmative. We have a motion to approve the fund report and docket.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by John Purdy.
Second.
Second by Chad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 affirmative. Okay, if you look at your agenda, we are supposed to move into old business, but we're going to take a little sidestep real quick. I want to introduce John Reed. He is a candidate for state representative, and he was wanted to take just a couple minutes to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Council, as well for the opportunity. John Reed, I'm running as Republican primary May 5th here in Johnson County, District 58, so Greenwood, Whiteland, New Whiteland, farmland over to Shelby, Johnson County line. And we appreciate your consideration. I am an old-time Republican and a young person's body. I think that's what I would say about myself. And just burdened to diligently work hard in the State House. And there's a lot facing our state right now. I think some very practical things like the property tax question and how that affects local governments and also affects the taxpayers. And I'd like to work to address that. I think that there's some needs there in collaboration with local governments and taxpayer and the State House. Talking with mayors and council members in different places. That's a real concern. And so I'd like to work on that particularly. We need to fund our police and fire and road work and all that, and right now property taxes do that, and so we need to address that need in a responsible way while also providing a need for taxpayers. So that's a big burden for me. I got 5 kids, my wife and I do, and I want this state to continue to be a great place to live and raise a family. And I'm a Christian, conservative, capitalist, and believe those things with all my heart and want to see that continue in the end. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, old business, the dewatering project funding. Robert?
Yep. So, if you guys all remember last month where we left this off was the first thing we talked about was the potential of possibly bringing in an extra $1 million from the sale of the water utility to try to offset or reduce the rate impacts from the financing for this project. So I believe what was sent out to everybody was kind of an updated rate impact sheet. Does everyone have a copy of that? I have extras if anybody needs one.
If you've got one handy. Yeah, I'll take one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, then they all just take one, pass one down, I guess.
Yeah.
I got a handful. You don't have
Thank you.
I got mine in my hand, all my little notes on it, So generally speaking, I tried to change this sheet as little as possible because I felt like everyone's already seen it and we talked over it. So in the middle of the sheet here, you see that this kind of blue line. So the top half was the same numbers and everything that we talked about last month. Now, if you look down at the bottom, that's when I kind of pulled in this extra $1 million funding source to reduce the project, the financial need of $1 million. So the real summary of when we do that to the average taxpayer, really regardless of which scenario we look at, it's going to reduce the impact by about 8% from the need for a rate adjustment, which is going to save the ratepayer about $3, give or take 20 cents, giving whichever scenario that we discuss. So that's really the nuts and bolts of what that extra $1 million is going to do. The one caveat I would point out too, if you look on the underwriting scenario, that doesn't drop by a complete $1 million from the par amount of the bonds. And the reason that is, with an underwriting, you're not borrowing you're not going to borrow the funds at 100% par amount. What that means is you're going to sell the bonds to the market at a 5% coupon, and investors are going to pay you more than that par amount for the bonds. And by adding or reducing that money in the timing of the maturity, that kind of impacts how much you're going to have as a par amount. When you borrow from the bond bank, it drops by exactly $1 million. That's because those bonds, since they're going through a state agency, it's at exactly $1 million. It's at exactly par, so it's 1-to-1. So that's, I thought that might be one of the first items that would jump out to people, so I just wanted to kind of cover that. I guess my first question is, do you guys have any questions on the updated analysis or what was presented?
I don't have any real questions. I will say that right under the blue line, those first two numbers are a lot more attractive to me than what we were looking at. And, you know, I know one of the things that we've talked about ad nauseum almost is if we have the money sitting there, it's the taxpayer money. So if we can utilize it for their benefit, I think this would be to their benefit.
Absolutely.
So,
and if you even think of it this way, it is earning interest now, but this is still earning your ratepayers something probably more than you would be seeing in that 3 to 4% interest. I'm guessing that you're getting on return for that money, because now this is saving them real money in their pocket.
Yeah.
The other thing we did look into as well is the process for being able to do that. We have had it confirmed with the State Board of Accounts that they are okay with the process. The one thing that you would need to do is pass a resolution kind of going through the terms. And you'd want to be very specific that this is not going to be on parity with your current outstanding bonds. What that means is from a holder of the bonds, their claim to any kind of revenues with your system, you don't want those 1-to-1, because that's going to become a parity issue where you're having kind of two debts outstanding and people saying that we have the same claims. Even though the town would always be below that, you just want to be very strictly documented that that's not what this pledge is. If the idea is to be solely on TAP revenues, you'd want to make sure that is crystal clear in the resolution, as well repayment terms. Maybe if you have a stated repayment, I would almost put a clause in there that if revenues are short that year, it can get pushed to the end. You could even say something along the lines that this could be forgiven. I've seen people do that as well. But as open as you leave it, that's better for when you get audited down the road, for just in case if you have a stated debt service amount and you don't make that whole payment, you can point to this that says, well, the town elected to say that if these revenues are short, then we're just not going to receive the money, or we're re-amortized for the remaining 10 years or 15 years.
So this is basically what I know we've talked about something similar to this in the past. Mm-hmm. And in reading your, the memo that you sent to us, this is going to be, we're loaning the utility the money to be paid back.
Correct.
Over, yeah.
Correct. And that's why you want those very specific terms.
Okay.
Think of it as two different entities, right? You're not really loaning yourself money. The general civil town is loaning money to the water or the sewer utility.
Okay.
So that's why you just want to make sure those repayment terms are crystal clear, because the last thing you want is being audited or someone looking at it down the road saying you're in technical default because that payment wasn't made, or you have to use other revenues to pay. You just want to make sure those terms are very clear.
So who would you suggest would draw up those terms? Is that something you'd help us with, or we'd be responsible for?
Either Lee or Tom Pittman. Tom Pittman is your bond counsel on the deal.
Gotcha.
You could do it,
Gotcha.
or Lee's going to do it.
And is it, I'm not saying I don't want to, but is it required that the utility pay that back to the town, or could we
That's why
just
you
say?
could, it doesn't have to.
No,
Okay.
it's not, as it turns out, no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use town funds to pay for that. You don't even have to loan it. You could just use the money to pay for it and not even bother as a loan.
Well, and part of the reason I ask is, you're looking at a smaller increase if we spend the million of the town's cash, but it's not really a reduction because there's going to be debt service on the million that's going to bring it back up and arguably would require the same increase in rates.
Well, for the reduction, the idea was you're going to use the tap-on fees that are going to be generated from future growth to pay down $1 million. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
So that and that's how you were able to pull it out of the rate, is because you're going to use those other sources or growth in revenue, just sewer revenues down.
Sure.
Other questions?
I wonder, this is sort of a hybrid approach, and the town can spend this $1 million, loan it, spend it, whatever it wants to do. But we still are going to have a component of this that's going to be bond issuance.
Oh, yeah.
And we're still going to have all of the soft costs that go with that. And we're going to have a bond counsel for that, right? We've already retained Tom, and I don't know that our costs for the soft costs related to this project are going to be less or much less if we use our own money. But it is going to reduce our debt. I just wonder, and maybe this is trying too hard to think of hypotheticals and to try to anticipate things that may be coming down the road that we really can't know about for sure. It's speculating a bit. But my thought is that if there's another project coming in the future that you could spend this $1 million on instead of spending it on this, and you could either spend that money or combine it with other money you have and avoid the borrowing of any money at all, you could eliminate all of the soft costs that go with the issuance of debt. Kind of like, if we're paying the cost of issuing debt anyway, then let's just issue it all in debt, and let's put this money aside and use it for something that we can just pay it out without having to package it with debt too. There's something about that kind of appeals me. We've already incurred the cost of issuing debt, so let's get the full benefit of the cost of doing it. But I realize that doesn't return any benefit back to your ratepayer. But it may result in you having to borrow money to do something in the future, and you could avoid borrowing that money on that project in the future if you held back this money to spend it with other money and do it all on your own and not issue us any debt at all.
Yeah, I follow exactly what you're saying. There's a risk, right? Whenever you spend money, you can't spend the same dollar.
You can't
twice.
spend it again.
So if you dedicate this money to this project, if you have something else 5 years down the road, 6 years down, however many years, and it may not be a sewer project, it could be a road project, it could be whatever project for the town, this money is no longer available. So I think what Lee's saying is now, to finance a project like this, it's about $100,000. Now you have to pay another $100,000 because this money's not available because you have to go through the cost of issuance twice.
I don't think for New Whiteland it turns out being $100,000, but it's tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And I guess, and I'm talking against myself a little bit because I have encouraged you to spend this money because we have been sitting on this money for 14 years or something now, and it's not been doing anybody any good, and it won't do anybody any good if you sit on it another year and another year and another year and another year. And when you talk about this in concept, is it better to spend the money here or bundle it with other money and throw it at some other bigger project, maybe a road project, or a town project that you can't look to ratepayers to pay for? Well, that has to be coming in the relatively near future, or else we're just sitting on the money and it's not doing anybody any good. But it seems like now's the time to mention that and for you to think about, is there a road project to be done on Tracy Road, or is there something else that the town needs, a comprehensive sidewalk improvement plan, or whatever that might be? And you have quite a bit of money left, even if you use $1 million here. And on the other side, you could throw more than $1 million at this here, and you could have the utility start to pay it back, and then you could forgive it or accelerate or reduce the payment schedule as you go.
The only thing that the money the water just a little bit.
Is it the bond amount then?
It's not just the bond amount. I want to talk about the two different revenue sources, right? So if you talk the difference between the property taxpayers and the sewer revenues. Generally speaking, there's not the cap on the sewer revenues, right?
Right.
You can raise your rates, and there's not a cap you can raise to. I don't know where your property taxes stand to, but you have the 1%, 2%, and 3% caps. So if you did have a property tax project, and this is all hypothetical, you would have a cap of how much you're willing to levy, because statutorily you can only levy so much.
Yeah. I mean, you can only have a 2% of the total assessed value of the town. Boy, I mean, and I don't mean to complicate this. It's like I'm just throwing in a bunch of other moving parts that are moving, but we're not sure what they do, and we're not sure, where they're going to take you. But once this money spent on this, like Bob said, you can't just very simply go in and yank it back out and decide, well, we really need it. We really want to avoid the cost of incurring debt to do this other project. So it's a big decision. I was delighted to hear from State Board of Accounts that you really are sort of free to do what you want. And I think what had us confused on that was there is a statute that talks about how you're limited on using town money for utility cash flow issues. And you can read it to say you can only use town money to address cash flow issues, and it has to be paid back in the same budget year. But I think State Board of Accounts' interpretation is if you're using it to address cash flow problems, it has to be paid back within a year. But if you're using it for capital costs, you're kind of free in your own discretion under their home rule to do what you want.
So how much, I realize we sold the water utility 14 years ago, long before I was involved here. How much of that cash is still?
3 million? Somewhere around there?
I think it was like 1,750,000, and then we keep reinvesting it into CDs, and then that interest goes into the money market account, and then that build up to, I think, $700-some thousand, and we invested $500,000 of it last year into a fourth CD.
I was thinking the money left over was closer to the 3 million than the 1.7.
I was too, no?
Yeah.
I don't know what else we've done. I know that we did the stormwater project, which was a chunk, right?
Well, but this building was part of that too.
Huh?
This building was funded in
Was
part
it?
by that, yeah.
Okay. I forgot that or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know it or.
But,
Okay.
More like 2,250,000.
how much?
$2,250,000, maybe a little bit more in interest, maybe a few thousand.
What's our annual interest?
Average. Right now, we're sitting right around 4%. I have a renewal, and the rates I'm getting are more like 3.8.
Okay, so what's that bringing in per year?
Not enough.
80, north of 80,000 a year.
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah.
How much?
Somewhere north of 80,000 a year.
4% of 2 million would be 80,000.
Yep. I understand where you're going with that.
And
It's
I'm
funny
telling you,
because-
I'm not trying to drive this.
Yeah.
I just, it's in the mix. That's all. Just
yeah, it's
something to think about.
funny because John and I just had this conversation. It doesn't seem like much, but when you go from $8.50 to almost $13 increase, which to a lot of people that's lunch money, to a lot of people that's serious money, and with the fact that the state basically kicked everything down to us, saying that, well, if you need more revenue, then you start your own local income tax. Okay, that's one more thing we're gonna ask people to pay if it becomes necessary. I don't know, I have a hard time with changing that around to where, okay, we're gonna save this $1 million for a what if that might be 5-10 years down the road when it's already been 14 years. Lee, you've convinced us all along that it needs to be something that we give the residents a benefit back for the sale of their water utility. I mean, I think it's great to consider, but if I had to make a decision tonight, I would lean more towards use it for that and give the folks some of their money back.
Well, for clarity, I think we do have to make a decision tonight, right? On that piece?
You don't have to make a decision on the $1 million tonight.
Right.
I thought we had to
The decision
decide
that
the
really needs to
bond
be
amount.
made on tonight is, one, the final decision to move forward with the project, and two, if you want to go and take bids for an underwriter. Those are the two things that need to really be moved tonight. You can wait on the $1 million pretty much till the day we sell bonds to decide whether or not you want to use that money for this.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that was the piece we had to decide.
But we have to have the rate increase in place before we sell the bonds?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you don't have to know
So
that to
really,
do
yeah,
your
you,
final
so
rate study.
up until you put the rate increase in place.
Yeah.
Thank you, I apologize. That's when you need to know, because that's gonna impact what percentage you put in place.
One of the things that I keep looking at is with those monies that we have, is it's nice to have a vehicle that is continuing to yield for us more money. At what point, because money makes money. So at what point have we made up from the interest for a future project?
Well, it's only been in the last 24 or so months that the rates have been where they are. Before that, they were rock bottom and had been for years.
Right.
So it's only in the last 24 or 30 months that we've really made anything to speak of.
Pretty much since before COVID, you were probably getting, what, 1% maybe,
Yeah, probably not
if
even
that.
Yeah, probably not even that.
And that's when the yield curve flipped.
Yeah.
And we've been self-correcting, and it's, you said down to 3.8. I would expect as we go forward, that's just gonna keep climbing down. I don't know if we'll get back to the 0.8%, but.
Yeah. I'm going to echo what John said. We've been sitting on the town's money for 14 years. We should use it. I'm not saying we use all of it. I think there's some sense to, there's going to be road projects, there's going to be other projects. We may have to bond for them. We'll spend 6 figures to bond the next time. That money's been sitting in the bank for 14 years. I think it ought to be expended for the benefit of the townspeople.
I'm in agreement that since we already talked about the million, that's only spending about 40% of our reserves.
Yeah.
And so that still leaves a fair amount for that emergency situation or a big project that we don't foresee right now.
Yeah.
So,
And the primary thing that gives me pause at all is SB1 and what's really going to happen. We've got a picture, but I think the picture is going to change in the next 12 or 24
I agree
months.
with that.
We just don't know how.
yeah.
But that's the only thing that makes me stop for a second and say maybe we ought to think about this. But I think it still makes sense to.
The lit statute's gonna be touched again, that's
Right.
gonna change, it's already been pushed to 29.
Right.
It's gonna continue to evolve.
With that being said, and with us not knowing, how much of a huge issue would it be on your part? Say, okay, yes, we do need to use some of this money, so let's split the difference. Rather than say, we're gonna take a whole $1 million and throw it in, what if we say we're gonna do $500,000? Just to stay on the safe side, because I know, Matt, you've made reference here lately to where, if we're not careful, we're cutting into reserves too much each year without realizing what we're doing. And so do we wanna maybe
I would tell you, the beauty of the math then is, since we're at exactly 1 million, if you want to take 500,000, this is round, but we're talking about 300, or $3, it'd be about $1.50. So it just kind of cut it in half.
Well, and for clarity, are we eating into those reserves? I think on an annual basis, we've been spending roughly what we bring in or less. I don't think we're eating into the reserves at this point.
Yeah,
It's fairly close. close.
Yeah. Right,
Some years they were,
Yeah,
Or
a
you
little
need
over,
to-
a little under.
and like I said, sometimes it looks worse if you go through based on, I'm just going with the sanitary, revenue that's brought in. If you add in all the non-reoccurring stuff we're bringing in, it makes it look a lot better. If you just base it off of what we're bringing in from usage, water use, I guess, it makes it look worse, but, as far as eating your reserve, it's not too awful, like I said, some years we are, some years we aren't.
Right, and I just wanted to clarify that, because that was certainly my understanding.
And one thing I did also want to say is, and maybe you didn't think about it, as far as if you do make the utility pay it back, which I think would be fine, my thought process through all this was because we were hoping to be able to use some of the availability fees that we're getting from the new subdivision, which is going to be just shy of $1 million, $980,000 when that whole thing's built out, was that basically every time the developer, turns in a permit, they've got to turn in that availability fee, it would basically go to pay towards that. So yes, we would be spending that $1 million right off the top, I guess. The hope would be within a year or two, that's fully built out and that money's back in there anyways. If that's what you guys decide to do as far as making the utility pay it back, so.
I think that makes sense, and you'd like to use that as a 3,200 or 3,900 a house for other things, but I think this is a good use of it. And if there's a year that something changes or shifts, or you've got a project we need to fund,
Right.
it sounds like we can set up a debt service, but the council can say, we're gonna forgive it this year, or we're gonna forgive it entirely.
Right.
I mean, we still have those options in our pocket.
What if we use a whole million and he pays back half of it?
I think that's kind of what Robert's saying, is we have the latitude to do that, so.
I'd probably set it up so we use the million, and we plan to pay back the million, but if something changes, we change the payback.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, and that's why you put the clause in there that this can be forgiven at any time.
Right, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So I guess we can make a decision tonight if we want to do it that way, and then that way.
One more thought, we're going to hear a little later in the meeting more information about MI Homes' proposed subdivision out west of town, and what a residential TIF districts, what that looks like, and what the implications in a kind of a big wide lens view. But I don't know whether if that comes to fruition, would in any way influence your decision about this or not, because that's proposed 331 additional customers who would be paying availability fees and from whom we would be collecting monthly sewer charges. And I guess now that we are confident that we have a lot of flexibility, I suppose if that happens, you could always change the arrangement that you have with the utility on repayment or forgiveness of debt. And so I guess you could say, well, we're gonna go ahead and do it. We'll see whether that happens. We'll rewire this thing based on what we learn, if it does happen. But not a decision tonight, but before we increase rates, but we do have ample time to not make a decision tonight? Are we?
For the $1 million.
For the $1 million.
I do think a decision needs to be made on whether or not you want to take some bids on an underwriter, because I believe the idea was to have bids come back in May.
Okay.
Is that still?
Well, I think we definitely do.
Yeah, so then we really want to be adopting the bond ordinance next month.
So, but if they decided tonight, and here again, I'm mentioning this, but not trying to talk you in or out of it. If you decided, we want to hear about what MI Homes has in mind and what Stephen Watson has to say about a TIF district, and we want that to be rolled into the bigger decision, you've got time. Yeah. If you're settled on this tonight, want to decide that, that's fine too.
So the capacity, and I realize this isn't really adding capacity necessarily, but it's replacing a part that needs to be replaced. we've already said there's plenty of capacity for the subdivision that's already started. If MI were to do what they intend, is there still sufficient capacity, or there?
Talking with engineers, that would put us probably right around 97% capacity. Obviously, we'll get a letter from IDEM saying, hey, you're getting close. I think at 90%, we get an early warning letter saying, hey, you guys are getting close. What's your plans? That plan could be, hey, we're gonna look at increasing capacity to continue bringing new in, or hey, we're not looking at, bringing any new customers in, so we should be fine. So yeah, the engineering stuff, at the very beginning when MI come in, they had told me, how many houses and things like that they were looking at. I had them look at it, and they showed us about, like I said, 97.
They also said they would fully pay all costs we incur to expand our plant.
Well, that's in the minutes.
Yeah, so no worries there. So you are paying attention.
It's a good thing you came, right? Well, so in layman's terms, I realize 97% is less than 100%. Is 97% acceptable, or is that too close to the edge and it's going to cause trouble?
I don't really think it's gonna cause any trouble. They overbuild them. What I'll tell you is, our plant's rated at 750,000 gallons a day with a peak flow of 2.2 million gallons a day. So, on, little spurts, it can handle 2.2 million gallons a day.
So we're at 97% of the 750,000?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
All right. That makes
Yes,
sense.
and I mean, just to tell you, when we had the last rain event come in here, it was close to 3 or 4 million gallons that day. So.
And there's a chance you may be,
Now that's gonna come down with the stuff we're doing up in Braintree.
Right.
yeah, and there may be a chance you would get some I&I out of there that you might buy back some capacity, but we can't count on that either.
Yes, I'm
right?
just saying, I do plan on that's gonna happen, especially.
We've identified some of that in Braintree already. Yeah.
And it might be great to spend money on remediating I&I and buy back capacity in the plant you have rather than spend that money building a bigger one, but that's a tall order.
And they also use a very conservative number. I can tell you, before we did the Brownstone and Grassy Manor, we were probably about 59%, maybe 60% capacity. We added the 257 homes, and we're sitting right around 63, 64%. So IDEM goes by 310 gallons per day is what they roughly say per house. And that number's very conservative.
That's significant.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't really even
I don't think we're
expect
adding that much.
I don't expect it to even be that 97%.
Right. Okay. I just wanted
That's
to
what
make
we
sure.
have to use based off of
Okay.
IDEM, so.
That's about 5.5 55-gallon drums.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we're under that.
Okay, so.
Okay.
We need to determine to what extent we're gonna move forward.
I like the idea, that we need to move forward. Okay. I also like the idea of waiting off to make the decision about the $1 million.
Okay.
There's no reason not to. I was under the impression that was part of the decision we had to make tonight.
I was too, so.
Yeah.
That was my
The one caveat I just thought about too, this sheet is based on the original rates that I used about a month ago. The market's up and down, and it can move again, so it can continue. So we could come back, if rates fall a bit, these rates could be down, and it could also be the opposite, so I just wanted to make sure that.
So really tonight, all we're deciding is to engage bond counsel. We don't have to decide between bond bank and underwriting at this point?
I would just need to go ahead from you guys to get bids on the
To get
underwriting.
started.
Yeah, to get that started. You don't have to make any commitments to anybody at this time, but we would at least need to start getting some bids in, so when you do make the decision, we would have some of them lined up and ready to go.
And we've also got the decision to make on, what do you call it, the wrap or the level? Whether it's.
Yeah, which, do you want to defer principal? So do you want to wait to repay principal on the bonds until after your current bonds have paid off? Well, it's not even a one-to-one, but we're just pushing it off to lower the rate impact. Or you can do what's called level debt service, where we just have the same payment over 20 years on the new bonds. But what that's gonna do is in those early years, it's gonna push your need or your max annual debt service higher, so that pushes your rates higher.
Well, which one of those
The
is,
offset to that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
which one of those is most advantageous to us?
From a ratepayer standpoint, it's wrapping it because you're keeping your annual payment lower. But it is a higher interest cost because you have a higher amount of bonds or par amount of bonds outstanding for a longer amount of time.
We would pay lower debt service on the new bonds until the old bonds pay off, and then we
Precisely.
ramp up on the new ones. So our interest cost over the life of the thing would be higher.
Precisely.
But it would allow us, what he's saying is it would allow us to have a smaller rate increase now because our cash flow in the early years our cash flow need would be lower in the early years.
Perfect. I had to look to him for, to simplify what was just told to me.
Layman terms.
Yeah.
That was
John, can you translate, please?
Okay, so I guess we need a motion to move forward with the,
Bond counsel.
thank you. Well,
No,
no, we
the
have bond
underwriter.
counsel.
I think.
Underwriting.
I actually think if we just go ahead and dispatch Bob to get for us some bids from underwriters, that's sufficient.
That's what I was getting
Right.
at.
Because you're not gonna take any action until you review those and select one of them.
Yeah.
So you see if you can get.
Yeah, there's three
get
main
some
firms that do this, so I
submissions,
can reach
right?
out to each one of them.
Is that Baird? Is that?
It's Baird, Mesero, and Stifel.
Okay. Yeah,
Those
thanks.
are the three people I reach out to.
And then the other action you could take would be on the $1 million if you're ready to do that tonight.
Yeah, it sounds like we got at
Probably
least
I'm
two that
not.
are ready to
Probably ought to
wait.
hear about the
So,
TIF at least, then we've got all the information.
okay. So, any objection?
No?
No objection.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks,
appreciate
Bob.
you being here. Angela, you have any other old business?
No.
Lee?
No.
Yeah, John?
We talked several months ago about potential for John to work in some capacity for the town. And I've talked to John about it a couple times. I've talked to the department heads about it as well. And I think it's fair to say, and Dave's not here, but I talked to Dave as well, there's not really any pushback from the department heads. The question becomes, okay, what would the duties be? What would you be expected to do? I think they've said fairly universally, and I agree, we don't need a town manager right now, meaning a full-time compensated town manager. That's on the horizon at some point, but we're probably not there. And they've said in that light, we're really not looking to have a supervisor, meaning report directly to somebody. So anyway, I just wanted to bring it back up again. I think there could be some sense to it. I know John's already spending some time going to meetings, doing some other things. Clearly when there's an HR issue, they don't call me, they call John Parent. So he's spending more time in that role already. And I just wanted to, I don't know if anybody else has given it any thought, if there ought to be some sort of for lack of a better word, an official arrangement. And I know John's talked about doing it for free for the time being. And if there ever came a point where he was compensated, if I understand right, he couldn't be on the council at the same time. But if he's volunteering his time, then that would be something that's workable. Yeah. So again, the long and short of the research I did was talking to Matt and Dwayne and Dave. What do you think about it? What are your concerns about it? What areas do you think some assistance could be given? Some of that may be vendors, some of that may be budgeting, some of that may be sometimes HR. So again, mostly I just want to bring it back up and see if the council has a notion to take any kind of action on it. And I don't know, John, did I get that right or wrong? Or
Yeah, John's correct. There have been some meetings that we've not necessarily been represented at. The Johnson County Emergency Management has had 2 meetings, and I know Matt and Dwayne and Joe went with me to the first one because it's something we're absolutely required to do. If we don't go, I know, laugh. But if we were not represented there and there was an emergency, we would not qualify for FEMA funds. Or we would have to do the report that they did at our expense, which is very costly. So the 4 of us went to the first one. The second one, which was a couple weeks ago, Carrie O'Haver and I went. And so we were represented. So if there's a FEMA claim that, you know, we should have an emergency and we need federal funds, we're covered. Those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. Having someone just available to residents or whatever on a couple-day-a-week basis. I will say this again, and I've said it forever. If we have to have somebody in here on a daily basis watching over our department heads, we did a bad job of hiring department heads. I don't think we need that. So that is not, what I'm talking about is if they need assistance with their budgets or they need, there's been times where I have, because of my job now, I'm able to go out and talk to people that they may need to buy things from, that they, you know, their hands are somewhat tied just because of time. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. I agree with John 100%. We do not need a town manager in any way, shape, or form. So, unless there's some objection, I'm going to continue to do those things. It does not give me any more authority than any other member of the council, nor will I take any. It's just trying to be of an assistance to our department heads.
Well, and I neglected to mention that I talked to Joe as well. He's hiding back there, so I forgot. But, you know, one of the things that I think as a council we probably should do that I don't think we do is annual reviews for the department heads. Well, I don't have enough interaction with them to do that, where I think John probably does. That might be something that he could draft for the rest of us to review and comment on. That would probably be part of it as well. And that starts to lean towards supervisor, but that's not really, that's a supervisory responsibility that the five of us have. So I wouldn't really look at that. I don't see this as being a direct supervisor.
The way I look at this, okay, because John does a lot for this town. And a lot of the things that we're talking about, he already does. Okay. I'm not sure beyond just acknowledgement that we need to formalize it in any way.
Exactly.
Because he can't act alone on 99% of the business that occurs without our approval to work alone. So, you know, as a council, for example, you gave the concept of evaluation. You know, as part of the governing body, we can say, council president can provide suggestions on. That's what I mean. I don't know what this looks like because we can give him the authority to have. Am I correct? Without any kind of formal hoopla.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's kind of when Lee and I first had this conversation way back when. That's kind of what he said. Is some of the stuff we're talking about, if you wanted to do it, you could. Time permitting. The biggest difference is I have the time where you guys actually work. Just saying. And it makes it a little more difficult for you guys to be able to do the things that I have a little bit more time. But yeah, Lee and I had that conversation, and yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And we talked about it originally too. I think it's a matter probably of feel than it is a need from any legal or administrative or structural perspective. John could kind of act the way he's acting now without ever having mentioned it to any of you, but did not want to be perceived as trying to micromanage the town and sort of get outside the boundaries of a council member or the president of the council. And so I think that was transparent, and it was a good idea on his part to reveal that. My sense is he has provided good support and helped to carry some of the load for the department heads through this part of this year so far. But I think not only is there not a need to formalize it, I don't even know what that would look like. And unless some one of you has an objection to him participating in the day-to-day operation of the town like he has been, he's sort of free to do that anyhow. And the hope would be that the town derives a benefit from it. And I guess I think that's what you're reporting, what you have learned from talking to department heads, is that it is. And so,
Well, I think each one of the department heads said it'd be interesting to sort of explore what other things, you know, again, I keep going to budget just because it's easy. There's probably other things that, you know, John could lean in to help with that either you guys aren't present, it sounds like a criticism, it's not. You're not presently doing or wouldn't know how to do. It's available, but don't know how to do things like that. So again, there's not any level of criticism in that, but my assumption, and I've asked John this 3 or 4 times, and he said that's not necessarily what he has in mind. My assumption is this feels like a middle step. And again, I get there's nothing formal because he's not employed. A middle step where we have somebody starting to do some of those administrative things. There's going to come a time we need somebody to do those administrative things on a compensated basis. Maybe eventually that becomes John and it becomes official and it becomes compensated, or maybe at some point the 5 of us as a council says, this is too much, we need somebody on staff to do this. So this, to me, it feels sort of like a middle ground, acknowledging what John's already doing and that he has the council's backing and again, I'm reading into things John hasn't said, but I think in my mind, that's a logical road to go down. There'll come a day, this feels like a middle step until we get to that day.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nope.
Nope.
John?
No.
Joe? Dwayne?
Just a quick update. ENB paving is finally going to be doing the final portion of the project that they started in 2025. We plan on doing that starting on the week of the 13th of April. One thing that I do want to ask, and me and I had conversations about the liquidated damages, but I think that's going to be a point of conversation at the beginning and ending point, you know, from what start date to end date that they will be assessed those. But I also want to pick the council's brain a little bit too, to see if they would be open to the option. I don't even know if this is possible. Rather than hitting them with liquidated damages and making a claim all on their side of it, we've got a project coming up in form of the wastewater stuff. We also have in our budget to overlay some of the stuff at the wastewater plant. Rather than hitting them with all of that, could we not then ask them to say, you're not getting hit with the liquidated damages if you're willing to do this, and that's payment at the wastewater plant. So, something to explore, doesn't have to be answered tonight, but I wanted to bring it to you, let you mull it over.
One question about that, and it's kind of directed at you, Lee. Obviously, we have struggled with E&B for the last year. And so now we're turning around saying, well, if you'll do this work, we won't enforce liquidated damages. Would there be a way to put a caveat in there that if they don't do the wastewater plant or whatever other work by a designated date, liquidated damages apply and we cut ties with them?
yeah, that's a good idea. That makes sense. I think too, we'd have to study on whether the bidding requirements for public works projects would interfere with sort of a deal cut with a paving company to do work for us. It's a good idea. I don't think we're there yet, but you mentioned it and point that out. We're not there quite yet, but we'll see.
Okay.
I guess I think that our focus should be getting the 2025 project done before 2027, and then see how we're going to kind of settle up after we get to that point. But yeah, that's good. That's a good idea.
Anything else, Dwayne? Steve, anything from the fire department?
No.
Matt? And I already asked you. New business, the Johnson County Public Library annual update. How are you?
I'm good. How are you all tonight?
Doing well.
I'm Lisa Littner, Library Director for Johnson County Public Library, and we have the beautiful Park Pleasant Branch down the road from you all. I also have some program guides, if you want, you don't have enough for everyone, but you're welcome to grab one on your way out today. Just a few updates. I do an annual review for all the elected boards in our library district. So I go over first what a great year we had in 2025. We checked out 1.3 million items, and over 900,000 of those items were books on our shelves or good old DVDs. And then 420,000 of those items were digital items. So items you can download on your phone, on your computer, use from home, never have to worry about a fee, which you don't have to worry about fines anymore anyway. We had nearly 400,000 visitors last year, 387,000, which is enough to pack the Colts games 6 times. And then we had 11,000 new library cards issued last year, and of that number, 4,000 were for students. And so I'm happy to say Park Pleasant Schools is one of our groups that we create smart accounts for, so they have digital access. So that's a lot of kindergartners and new students into your, because the folks who were students last year, they get to keep their same card number. So in Johnson County, in our library district, 55,000 residents or households have library cards. And then something we're always really proud about at JCPL is our programs. We create about, 3,700 programs a year, and last year nearly 78,000 people attended those programs. Johnson County continues to be the 10th largest library district in the state of Indiana, and there are 236 of those. But we rank 3rd for attendance at our library programs. So Indianapolis, Allen County, or Fort Wayne, and then Johnson County. So we're really proud of the number of programs that we have that support lifelong learning, as well as the number of folks who come to our programs. Another important program we do is called Explore Summer, which is a learning program we do during the summers for all ages, but it's really geared to keep students engaged in learning and reading during out of school time in the summer. We had over 6,000 people participate, and together as a community, we read 5.1 million minutes together. That's pretty impressive. So our strategic plan is like a living document. We have a 5-year plan. We started that in 24, and we've completed almost all the goals, so we're creating new goals all the time. So one of our main focus is welcoming new library users. With a lot of growth in Johnson County, we're trying to figure out how to meet those new homes, those new apartment folks, and make sure they know about library cards. This year, we're also establishing policies and guidelines for using AI, artificial intelligence. I know I use it several times a day, but we want to make sure we're using it the right way and following laws and copyrights and all that good stuff, but also helping our patrons with the best resources. And next on our plan, we want to continue to have great connections. So school readiness is really important to us. We have 1,000 books before kindergarten program, and we also do kindergarten readiness bags. So we attend all of the schools like kindergarten sign-up nights, and children who are going into kindergarten get a free bag with a book, some activities to get ready for kindergarten, and other chalk or bubbles for fun too. So we will work really hard with that. We also partner with Windrose Health to do kits for really young preschoolers to increase literacy for them. And most of those things that I've been talking about with programs are funded through grants or through donations to our library foundation. We got a large grant this year for from the Community Foundation, and that we provided lots of meals for, we put kids together, and people were able to pick up meals or go to programs regarding healthy cooking as well. So 2026 is a very important important year for America. It's our 250th anniversary, and JCPL is planning tons of programs. We have them going on right now. There's a bunch in the guide, but we have a few programs particularly that I want to share. We have a film series going on at the Art Craft Theaters. This month will be Little Women, based on a book set during the Civil War. That's all for families. And then we'll have 3 other films at the Art Craft over the next several months. We're also partnering with Trafalgar's new amphitheater. Let's hope I shouldn't say actually. Let's hope it's built by the time we do our first concert. We're going to do some concert series there as well. And we're excited to do that, as well as storytelling series. 2 programs for the 250 we're really excited about. There's going to be a community dinner at the Franklin Amphitheater. We're partnering with the city of Franklin for that. We're up to 300 folks from all over the county who sign up and come to a potluck meal and have a conversation about being American. And then Military Day, we're partnering with the Johnson County Armory, and we're going to have a huge program on November the 7th, which is a Saturday, and it's going to be an all-day event celebrating U.S. history and our military. We're going to have a tank there. We're going to have a Huey helicopter there. So we're really excited. We're also going to have a best-selling author who was former retired military, and everybody attending that program will receive a free book. And we'll be having tons of ongoing programs, reenactments, really trying to get a hide and seek with a soldier on the grounds there. So lots of activities for all ages. That'll be the Saturday before Veterans Day at the Armory. And that's an update of what went on and what's happening now. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Okay, CD renewal, Angela.
Yes, I received a notice from Citizens Bank that one of our CDs is up for renewal. April 16th. It's the new one that we started last year from the money market account, 500,000. And I've been in contact with different banks to get rates. I'm still getting those, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm getting stuff like 3.8. And so what I can do is let you guys know what I received as far as that and see what you want to go with when I have those numbers finalized.
Okay.
But that'll be before
Which-
our next meeting, so.
Yeah. Which one is that? Which?
It's the one we pulled money from the money market account.
Okay.
So we started with the fourth CD, that's that one.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. The residential TIF, Mr. Watson.
But I sent an email to all of you, along with a little video you may have watched. I've asked Stephen to be here. He's 2 doors down from me in our office, and I raised him from a young pup, and he's still an ongoing project, but he's turned out pretty well. And
He dresses better.
doesn't he, though? Boy, I'm a little self-conscious about that. He'll hear about that tomorrow. But MI Homes is here. We've got 3 representatives from MI Homes sitting out here. I think just to make sure we don't mess up and to report back to Mom and to answer questions if we have any. And they're good to be here. And I said, I'm not sure we'll have anything for you. But Stephen's here to talk about what MI has approached the town about, which is development of some ground out west of 75 West, which would require us annexing it and bringing it back in, right? And so that's in the process. They filed applications already. We don't have them scheduled for hearing because I don't know what you all want to do and whether you even want to move forward on this or not. But I think we learned a lot when the Pleasant Creek subdivision was done. And I think we all came away a little disappointed that it didn't result in more tax revenue for the town than what we had kind of anticipated. And Adam Stone came and explained that to us and all. But this new development comes on the heels of that. There is available for another year or 2 a residential TIF alternative that might allow the town to capture additional tax revenue off of new development that we would annex into the town. And I want you to be aware of that, because that may color your view of whether this is something you want to bring into the town. And I want you to be able to contrast what's possible, as Steve will explain, with what we ended up doing with Pleasant Creek. And I think y'all need to know that now, as we're being asked to consider annexing the ground and zoning it and approving the development of it. Now seems like the time for you to understand what might be possible in that regard. So Stephen knows this stuff. He's been doing the redevelopment work for Greenwood and for Whiteland for a number of years and doing all their TIF work. And so it's wonderful that we have him available to us, so I've asked him to come. There you have it.
All right, thank you, Larry, and greetings to everyone. It's been a long time since I've been with you folk, and maybe so far back that you don't even...
Nobody knows you.
Well, John does.
John Perry. Yeah, but see, he left. As soon as I started talking, he left.
Yeah. I wanted to start with what everyone in local municipalities understand is that the state is making it harder and harder for local municipalities to fund the needed local public improvements and services that we all know are needed. And the question becomes, what do we do? And one of the things that is an alternative is what we know as TIF districts. And in 2023, the state passed a law that gave a small window of opportunity for not just normal commercial TIF districts, but allows them for this limited time to be used for residential projects. And so this is an opportunity then that you might be able to use, if you so desire, for this proposed project or any other. But to Lee's point, it does expire June 30th of next year, 2027. So if you're going to do it, I would strongly recommend that you start and complete that process prior to June 30th. Just so get that out. Now, it's very basics. I don't know how much you know or any about TIF districts, but TIF, that is an acronym, stands for Tax Increment Financing. And it is a financing tool that allows local municipalities and counties to incentivize and fund local public improvements that would otherwise not be feasible because of the lack of funding, essentially. And so this provides an opportunity to fund things that otherwise couldn't be funded. The basics of TIF and the tax increment concept is, if you think about new development will create new AV, which will create new property tax revenue, or property tax payments. And I would conceptualize it by thinking in terms of 2 5-gallon buckets. And right now, well, in this case, it's annexed property, or will be annexed property, so you don't get anything out of it right now. But if it's annexed, you and the other underlying or overlapping taxing units, talking about schools, libraries, township, etc., you all get to share in what the current assessed value is for that property. That's called the base AV. And essentially that's one bucket. And you have a hose of tax revenue that flows into that bucket, and that bucket will continue, if you create a TIF district, that bucket will continue to get the same amount of water or tax revenue with or without your project creating a TIF district. Once you create a TIF district, you get a second bucket. And that second bucket is full of the new AV that comes off of the new development. And both buckets get filled. It's just that that second bucket does not get shared with the underlying taxing units. Instead, that second bucket, and the revenue that's from it, gets exclusively administered and used by the redevelopment commission that oversees the TIF district. So that's a real simple way of trying to describe how a TIF district works. works and its concept.
And that redevelopment commission is New Whiteland.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
You get-
and I'll jump around a little bit
Okay.
with my notes, but in order to create a TIF district, you first have to create a new governing body called a redevelopment commission. It'd be the White, in your case, it'd be the Whiteland Redevelopment Commission. It would be 5 members that would be, actually, you all 5 could appoint yourselves as those 5 members. And in fact, Trafalgar has done that for several years now. But you don't have to have any of you be part of that redevelopment commission members. But you have to appoint 5, and they have to be residents of the town. In addition to the 5 voting members, there's 1 non-voting advisor that is effectively a representative of the schools. They either have to be a board member of the school or someone that the school board, has recommended to be appointed to that. So they get a voice, but not a vote at these meetings. So the redevelopment commission then is the one that has to actually take the various legal steps to create a TIF district. It starts with, well, in the case of a residential TIF, you have to first, as a practical matter, create a plan. A residential housing development program is what it's technically called. And for practical purposes, it really needs to identify the specific projects that you want to fund with the TIF revenue that's expected to come off of the project.
The second bucket.
The second bucket. Very good. Thank you. And once you have put together that plan, and that's kind of in the background, it doesn't get officially approved at the early stage, but your staff or your professionals have to prepare that. And then you basically have to have some pre-meeting meetings. And those meetings have to be with the representatives, or you at least have to invite a representative from the school corporation, the superintendent in particular, any neighbors of the property or other interested persons have to be invited to provide input into this. And let's see, I want to make sure I've got all those covered. Yeah, I think that essentially covers who has to be essentially consulted or given the opportunity to be involved with developing the program before it gets presented officially to the redevelopment commission. It would be presented officially as a resolution of the redevelopment commission for them to adopt, which would adopt the plan and that program. It would establish what property is going to be the TIF district and various other legal details that have to be part of that. That kicks off the process. It's actually a 5-step process for establishing a TIF district. It starts with the redevelopment commission adopting that, what's called a declaratory resolution. That resolution then gets forwarded to your plan commission for them to review it and confirm that yes, it is consistent with our plan of development or comprehensive plan. It's typically what we think of for the town. Once they have approved that resolution, it then goes to the council, to you, for you to review and give your approval. And if any of these things aren't approved by plan commission or you, then it stops. Assuming that you were to approve it, it then goes back to the redevelopment commission, and they have to hold a public hearing. But as part of setting up the public hearing, they have to prepare a financial impact statement, basically. And that statement and the notice of the public hearing has to go to all the underlying or overlapping taxing units, schools, townships, etc. And they have to be given notice and the opportunity to come to the hearing and speak their piece about the proposed project. Make sure I'm getting everything covered here. part of that resolution and approval process, and by the way, before I get too far afield, that fifth step of the process is after you've had the public hearing, you can then, the redevelopment commission can then adopt what's called a confirmatory resolution. That's basically saying, we know we adopted the declaratory a month or two ago, and we now want to confirm that yes, indeed, we intend and want to go ahead and move forward to make that official and final. And that's what that confirmatory, that fifth step does. And once you've done that, then you file it with the LGF, and you record it with the county and submit filings with the county and so forth. That completes that process. But the resolution does have to include some specific findings, essentially two in nature. One is that the project or plan will promote the public health and welfare and benefit the public health and welfare through the program. And the second is that the accomplishment of the program, which is the residential housing project, will be a public utility and benefit as measured by one of three things: the provision of adequate residential housing, that's pretty obvious. Secondly, or an increase in the property tax base, that should happen, or other similar benefits. Residential TIF projects, quite honestly, from a finding standpoint, are pretty easy to satisfy. Now, one other thing that's very important for you to understand is what's referred to as the but-for test. And that's essentially saying that you are not allowed to create a TIF district for a project if the project was going to happen anyway. So essentially, it's got to be a situation in which if the TIF district and the financing that comes along with that is not necessary to incentivize effectively the developer to develop that property and create the new assessed value, then you can't do it. Again, that's referred to as the but-for test. And Lee and I have had discussions about how that might play out in this particular situation, but I'll leave it to Lee to maybe flesh that out a little bit more if he wants to. The key points that I would make sure that you're aware of, and then there's some other issues I'll point out too. One, school funding can be and likely will be an issue because the schools are likely to get more students out of a residential project like this. And if they're not getting any more tax revenue to help them fund the services that they need to provide to those new students, they're going to feel like they're in a crunch. So they could oppose the project. Now, they don't have a veto over it, but as I said earlier, you have to at least consult with them, give them a voice, and depending on how strongly they feel about it, they could try and raise public awareness and so forth and oppose the project. That said, there may be ways that your plan could be crafted to help mitigate the impact on the schools. Depending on how things play out, you can get into those discussions. Excuse me. The life of a residential TIF district is 20 years, and that's the clock on that 20 years starts whenever you effectively issue a financing that's using TIF funds. And so, depending on when that might start, thank you, that's when the 20-year clock starts. But it's not an indefinite period of time, as you can tell. Assuming that you will, in fact, be issuing some sort of financing. The TIF funds, the TIF revenue that comes off the project may only be used to fund projects that are in the plan that was adopted as part of that resolution. Thank you, Lee. I'm not like lead to where I'm used to talking all the time. So, a little more water.
Yeah. Good, it's good training for it. It's muscle building.
Did you tell him that's the $200 water?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
We already talked about the statute expiring in 2027 next year. You can only do one bond issue per residential TIF district. If there is a bond issue, which presumably in this case there would be, my understanding is that part of the reason that this might be a benefit is to basically get cash early, be able to fund a project early and get it kick-started, early. So if there is a bond financing or other financing of some sort, this body, the council, has the ability to say yes or no on that financing. You ultimately control that. The redevelopment commission can't do it on its own. It has to get you a blessing as part of that process. In this case, as a practical matter, that will probably, in the case of financing, it will probably require some form of guarantee. And I'll explain in a bit why I say that. One, either from the developer, or two, from the town. The town can give a guarantee based and back that bond or the repayments from general property tax powers that you have. And those issues will have to get played out, and you'll have to get guidance from your financial advisor on that. But the reason why I say you probably will need that is because it takes a while for the AV to get generated and for TIF revenue to start coming in. And in the market, they want some certainty that there's going to be that money there. And a pure, what's referred to as a pure TIF bond, to where it's only payable through TIF, they want to see revenue that already exists and is reliable before they're going to be willing to sell a bond that's based solely on that. Also, as a practical matter, once a redevelopment commission is established, there are administrative maintenance issues, reports, and filings and so forth that just, irrespective of any TIF project you might have, they have to follow those statutory filing requirements and so forth. And so there is some administrative expense and so forth that would go along with having a redevelopment commission. Okay, some practical key issues that I would point out. When you're talking about residential TIF, you're basically dealing with homestead property. And homestead property is subject to a 1% property tax cap, right? So I don't know what your normal tax rate is. It's in the 2% range, give or take. And you might expect, well, you would collect, with commercial property, 2% or more, or whatever your tax rate is. But in the case of residential property, you can only count on 1%. It's as a practical matter. And that's where, again, your financial advisor would be able to advise more specifically on that. And a related question is, the projects that you want to see funded, how much, someone's going to have to calculate how much total projected cost that will be, and do some additional, number crunching to see whether the proposed project is likely or not to generate assessed value and therefore property tax revenue that will be able to pay for those costs. And if they don't match up, well, that may tell you that this may not work. Or you may have to talk about being creative and structuring things with the development and so forth. Now that said, I'm going to step out on the limb a tad bit. This kind of wraps things up. I did some back of the napkin kind of estimates on possible TIF revenue. And if we're talking about 20 years, and I don't know what the projected assume 300,000 of property in the AV, and I think there's 331 currently proposed homes. Well, you're in the ballpark of about $100 million, I think, in total assessed value. Well, multiply that by 1%, and it's $1 million a year. Well, 20 years, that's $20 million total over the course of 20 years. But you're not going to get all of that $1 million the first year. And it's going to take them a while to build that out. So ultimately, and this again, is back in the napkin, after you take into account financing costs and financing over a 20-year period, you may be able to net usable funds on day one from financing between $5 and $10 million. That's just my back of the napkin, off the cuff, based on some very crude numbers. Your financial advisor, the developer, they can help fine tune that. That's pretty much it, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, 2 questions I have.
Yep.
Number one, specifically, you said they have to be for projects. What type of things could we utilize that for would be my first question. And number 2, since MI has already put in a plan, so to speak, of what that they want to be annexed and all that, does that not negate the first thing that you said, that it would not have been, that the project probably would not have happened if we did not do this?
Well, let me take a stab and leave my add to it. When a project like this comes in, and you experience this with your prior recent project, there are impacts that that project has on your local infrastructure. And you can require the developer to pay for those impacts, whatever improvements are needed. And to the extent that there are impacts that the developer hasn't yet, offered to pay for or proposed to pay for, and they, in your view, are needed to happen, be paid for, be constructed, in order for this project to be acceptable to the town, that's where I think the but-for test gets satisfied. Lee, you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's how it works. I guess the question comes to mind for me, when in the process do you sort that out? So, MI's here, that we've met with them, they told us a bit about what they want to do. I've asked Dwayne and Matt to give some thought to what they think the impacts of this development would be, and what they think may need to be done in the way of capital projects in order to address those impacts. And I think they can talk about that tonight to whatever extent you may want to hear from them. But do we try to work through this with MI Homes to the point where they have agreed to address these impacts, but won't agree to address other impacts, or we fall short in negotiations on getting everything addressed? Does the town at that point say, okay, well, to go further with this, we're going to have to pursue the TIF district? Or do we do that at the very beginning of this, knowing that all of this conversation is taking place against the backdrop of the TIF district that's being formed? I mean, when do you decide that you need it?
Yeah, I think you at least need to have some level of discussion about what the town believes is needed, and find out whether the developer is willing to pay for all those needs without a TIF district.
Yeah.
And if in the course of that discussion they say, no, we need extra help to get that done, then that's your answer. You could, in whatever.
So the process takes a while.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and to get back to you had
to the
later
second
question.
part,
What can you pay for? And that was part of your question anyway.
yeah.
And the simple answer is, you can pay for the construction of any infrastructure, including streets, roads, and sidewalks, or local public improvements This is all very broadly worded. Local public improvement is a very broad term. I will tell you that under the redevelopment commission statute. Any local public improvement in, serving, or benefiting a residential housing development project. So for example, if you have either Tracy Road or Whiteland Road that needs to be widened because of the increased traffic, etc., or an intersection needs to be reconstructed.
Nowadays, when you say intersection, you do this.
Even though it's not in the project, if it's going to serve or benefit the project, it can be funded.
Okay. Now, the second part of my question was, you had mentioned earlier that one of the qualifiers to do this, if I remember correctly, it had to be that this project would not happen if we did not do this.
Right.
Okay, but if they have already submitted paperwork that they want to be annexed and they want to build the homes, does that not already supersede us trying to do a TIF district if they've already said, hey, we're going to buy this property and we're going to build?
I think the simple answer is no, because presumably you're going to, unless their proposal is something that you are ready and willing to accept and approve as is, that's not enough. And I would assume that it does not include some of the other things that we were just now referring to. In terms
Okay.
of, like off-site improvements that may be needed by the town.
Okay.
The requests that MI Homes have submitted, their applications, and they're wanting to move quickly. They made that clear to us, and that they have hurried up and gotten these filed. But we haven't acted on them yet.
Right.
And I think my prediction is if the impacts of this proposed development that the town identifies are not addressed by MI Homes either agreeing to make improvements or help pay the cost for improvements to be made by the town, or are not addressed through additional revenue that we collect out of the second bucket of a TIF district. I guess I think that the decision makers on their request, who are the five of you, are going to say no. And I think that gets us back to what Stephen said about the but-for test. I think that ultimately anyone can come in and ask to be annexed. That doesn't mean they get annexed. That's a vote that you all cast, and you either annex them or you don't. My hope would be, if you think that it's bringing impacts and burdens and no benefit, the answer would be no. They have also filed a petition for rezoning to rezone property that isn't yet in the town, just to get the process going. And like with Gradison's Pleasant Creek, we did all that simultaneously. And you may recall, well, you will recall, sorry, the way we got the impacts addressed by Gradison on Pleasant Creek was through all of those development commitments, where they agreed to do certain improvements, like at the intersections of the existing roads with the entrances. They agreed to contribute money toward the cost of the roundabout. They incorporated into the development some features that you all thought were important. They're making some other contributions. I think we've got $290,000 on one, and we've got a $75,000 contribution on another, and they're making some of the improvements themselves at their own expense. And we ultimately got to a point through the negotiation, the dance that you do, where they had offered enough in the way of conditions, commitments, promises, contributions, improvements at their expense, that they won the approval of the five of you and the Plan Commission to proceed with the development. Here we are again queuing up another one. And I guess we have, if all that can't be done through negotiations with MI Homes, but there still is an interest in trying to make it work, we have another way to get at it, and that would be through this TIF district. And I think that the reason it may be more compelling this time is by adding 331 homes in it and extending the town out to the west, we are layering on the impact to the town that the Gravison development has, the impacts to the town that the MI Homes development will have, which I think makes more compelling Dwayne's interest in trying to get Tracy Road and Whiteland Road, or one or the other, improved to handle the additional traffic. Those are projects that need to be done anyway. And one thought I had was, we want to do this. He's been talking about, he's been wanting to do it. He's been trying to find funding for it. We have plans for it. You could look at this like, well, we can't approve the development because it's going to impact the infrastructure we have now, and we don't have any way to get out in front of it in order to deal with the impact. So we're going to say no. Or you can say, we really want to embrace the development, but we want to do it in a way that we can use that development and the additional tax revenue it generates, and maybe in this second bucket, to be able to do the projects we've been wanting to do and actually get them done sooner. And we're going to take on more burden, but we're going to be able to better address the burden we already have, and we're going to do it in such a way that we can also accommodate what's coming. And so in that sense, it could be viewed as an opportunity, right? But to your point, right now, we've not approved anything, and them asking for it doesn't give them any right to approval. Them saying we want to be annexed doesn't cause you to have to say, oh, gee, more's coming. What it causes you to have to do is say yes or no. And they can't make you annex them. So now's the time to be talking about this, right?
Well, what you have described and what Stephen has described makes a lot more sense to me, because my envisioning of a TIF district was whatever revenue you generate had to be used right there.
Yeah.
I never expanded it to Tracy Road, because it will absolutely have an effect, and that would be the kind of money, and the plan that you've put together would take care of a good portion of that.
And I think the other piece too, and I didn't know this, and Stephen explained it to me as we have talked about this, is the idea that you know the homes are going to be built and the traffic's going to be coming, but gosh, what are we going to do in the 3, 4, 5 years while it's building out, and we're waiting on that bucket to fill and the money to come our way? Look at what additional suffering we're going to cause to the residents in New Whiteland on these roads that are inadequate while we're waiting to get the money so we can improve them. Well, no, you could go ahead and do the project now, just like the sewer project, right? You borrow the money, you issue bonds, you borrow the money, you do the project today, so that the improvement's in place before the burden comes, and you pay off that debt over the 20-year term of the TIF district. As you collect the money, you're paying debt service on that, right? I mean, it's just like any other project.
You could even do a by anticipation note to kind of push off that debt service a little bit too, to give you
Until the bucket starts to fill.
Give it a little bit of time to fill. Because the other thing that you need to remember on a TIF, there's a 2-year lag. So let's say a house was built today. The assessment date for that house is going to be 1/1/26. So that means you're not going to receive revenues until
May 27, right?
So there's this lag between construction and revenues coming in, because it's assessed and paid the following year. So that's where like a ban could help you too, because I think your idea here would be you never want to actually levy a property tax, right?
Yeah.
You're using that backup as a security for your potential.
But a ban can cover that long a period of time?
Up to 5 years.
Oh, up to 5 years.
Yep. And the other thing is, technically, you wouldn't have to, since you have a special benefits tax on it, you wouldn't have to leverage the TIF. You wouldn't have to put TIF backing on it, so that the clock wouldn't start.
So that would postpone the 20-year running time until the temporary ban becomes permanent financing? Is that what you mean?
You could do that. You
Okay.
could do a couple different things. So the one thing is you could do a band, so that's only payable from a bond when that band matures. If you're gonna do a special benefits tax on that bond, you would not have to pledge the TIF. Because the ultimate repayment of that bond is actually a property tax levy on all usable property, or on all property that.
But that's the whole
within
town.
Within the town.
That's the whole town, right?
But then you pay it with the TIF.
Oh,
So the risk there though is
Oh.
if the TIF is short, you have to levy a tax. So that's why a lot of times people would want to wait till that TIF is built up to actually issue a debt.
okay, I get it. But unless something sort of catastrophic happened, like a 2008 sort of scenario,
Yes.
you ought to feel pretty confident, particularly now over the next few years, that the money from the TIF would come quick enough to be able to keep up.
Yeah, it would all just depend on the build out of the subdivision and value of the home.
And whether anybody buy an MI home, right? I mean, that'd have a lot to do with it, right? You guys feel pretty good about it, I guess.
We're all right. And I would add some of the uses too. You could use it for utility infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
I've seen people use these type of TIF dollars to. You're talking capacity issues. You could use these dollars to help.
Yeah, we've talked about
instead
that.
of using utility dollars to help offset that.
Right, we talked about that, and we understand we could. These two they're going to be wrestling here in a minute because Dwayne didn't want to give up any of that money to Matt.
You don't get all of it.
Well, you know, I will guarantee you that everybody in this room at one time or another, it says, why in the heck did they build all this, but they didn't do the streets and everything else to make it compatible for what we're building?
Right.
This makes sense, that if we can do it ahead of time and then pay for it, like you said, that's kind of a no-brainer.
You know, I think our office is right there on Emerson Avenue, and you all been around here a while, right? You remember when they did the Emerson Road project and why it made it like a boulevard and the Greenway and all that, and well, did you do that?
Yeah.
So Stephen did that.
All by yourself.
So that
That's a lot of work.
That's impressive.
he's fit. He's running marathons and stuff. So that corridor would be there with infrastructure to be able to support the traffic before they started building it out. To your point, right? It makes a lot more sense than to have a dirt road and then start building all this stuff. And once you have it in place, figure out how to respond to the traffic needs. And that's kind of how it would work here. And I think that we do have some project needs that we could get after with it. And you're going to care a lot about this because there may also have to be some kind of a arrangement with Clark Pleasant because we're getting in your pocket in a big way if the town takes everything that goes in that second bucket. You want some of that. And I don't mean to give up money to the town right out of the gate, except we all know that's coming. You heard it and you know it, and we have to have you at the table. But I think that's workable too. I think you've got to decide whether you want to, whether this is of interest to you and whether you want to pursue it or not. And does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Dwayne,
a very common approach to a project. Right?
Well, not so much in a residential setting, though, right? Because they're not quite as common, or
Yeah.
They are?
You see the revenue sharing with the schools to help offset.
Oh, that piece,
and
yeah.
to help to the infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it done to help infrastructure or even a park or stuff like that, because a lot of times when you bring these new people into your town, there's just not extra money to do those kind of things. So this has become an avenue of way to help fund that.
Dwayne needs to be careful because I think Lisa wants to punch him in the head.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah, that's that
she'll backhand me like my mother used to.
too. And another question, I don't.
No, is there anything else that, there's nothing we need to do or can do tonight, right?
Well, you can express your interest, I guess, in this,
Okay.
yeah, and whether this is something that you think that the town has an interest in, and I guess unless MI Home says, don't worry about that silly TIF district, whatever y'all need, just ask us, and we'll pick up the tab. Then we don't need to talk about it anymore.
They're not
But I
smiling.
think there would be, but what I imagine is some collaboration where it isn't the case that MI Homes isn't asked to participate, like they know what this looks like. We know what this looks like. There would be sort of that kind of exchange like we had with Gradison. But in addition to that, if we're trying to get after some of the bigger things, and I keep looking at you, but it's roads, right? I mean, what we care most about and what we think is impacted most are roads. And so I think if we're wanting to do more than what I think is realistic from MI Homes, we got to figure out another way to get it done. And this is another way to get it done. So, but how do you move forward? So we've got MI Homes with an annexation petition on file and a zoning petition on file. We got Rachel calling us every day because she wants to send her notices. And we're telling them we're not ready to have a hearing yet. They want to get moving. But how do you plod through this?
I thought about this and I wrote a note. Basically, the next step, in my view, somebody's got to do some number crunching. Start with what are the projects you think need to be done?
Dwayne's done that.
He's got it.
And then if you've got the projects and the numbers, cost estimates to go along with those projects, and assuming that they are all tied or will serve more benefit, the new project, then the next step in my view is some financial advisor needs to crunch the numbers and see, is this project going to kick off enough revenue to make it work?
Enough revenue. TIF revenue. But in that mix is also what MI Homes is willing to do.
Right.
And I guess part of what I'm asking is in our negotiations with MI Homes, our conversations with MI Homes, I mean, do we first see what's possible with them and decide if that's falling short of what's needed based on the analysis? Oh, we're going to have to do a TIF district, or do we start out on parallel track saying we're going to do a TIF district? We're also going to talk to MI Homes, and we're going to see how we synthesize those two things together. I mean, do you commit to a TIF district at the outset, or do you wait until you get to a certain point with the developer?
I think you need to explore probably both at the same time, not commit to TIF district until you decide it's actually.
Until they really let us down.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Wouldn't you have to finish the annexation first anyways? Because
Well,
you can't annex
it's a
parcel
condition
that's
too.
not-
I mean, that would be a condition.
All conditioned along the way. I mean, we don't want to annex it if this isn't going to happen, right?
Sorry, if I can speak on behalf
Yeah.
of my homes here real quick too. The one thing about annexation, obviously, we would like to put that as a condition of zoning, so it's all of it's still tied together.
Well, yeah, we
Everybody's
can't zone you if we don't
Correct.
annex you.
Right, but we're saying the way that the property owner would annex is a condition to approval of zoning.
Yes.
Right, we don't.
We get
go out
that.
there and annex and, okay.
No, we won't do that. No, that won't happen.
It would be simultaneous, right?
It would be, and
614.
yeah, understood.
I think we ought to pursue it. I like it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you know, I've always wanted to annex over
Yeah.
there because it gives us more of a say-so in what happens to that piece of property that is from Honey Creek to 75.
Yep.
And it scares me to death, especially the closer you're getting to Honey Creek, as far as what is going to happen there and what's going to go in.
And you want to get there quick. 'Cause it's coming. I'm sorry, you want to
Yeah.
get there quick. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
coming.
I think the other part about that, John, too, is if we capture this first development closest to 75 West, and the sewers for that development come our way, I think that really increases the likelihood that as the rest of it develops, it comes our way. Developments follow sewers, right? And I think that you all own a business that is a sewer utility, and you have an opportunity here to grow your business by adding customers. And the way you add those customers and grow your business is to bring that land into New Whiteland and capture that, make that first connection, then I think it all just comes.
As I was looking at the maps earlier, how does this affect rustic land?
Rustic acres.
Rustic acres.
I don't know.
Border on the south side, yeah.
It butts up against it.
Did either one of you actually answer my question?
Their subdivision, if.
I understand it
on the
borders.
south side of Rustic Acres.
Okay,
Here's
but
Rustic
Rustic Acres is still out of town.
They have to come to us for annexation, would they not?
Yeah, you can't go throw a net over it.
Right, so doesn't this give them potentially a little more incentive for that to come in?
Maybe.
Okay.
It'd be contiguous then, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, we meet that
You
requirement.
used a big
I
word.
learned that in Clark Pleasant.
I taught you well. I taught you well.
Wow.
And if this ground came into New Whiteland and was developed, and the TIF district formed, and then the next 60, 80 acres, can that be done? And is that a new TIF district?
You could
How does that work?
Make it a new district, or you could amend and expand the existing.
But you could do the same deal. You could have a second bucket for that.
But we're gonna run out of time though, right? It's,
You know,
you
it would
say,
have to do its own clock.
well, no, that's not what I mean, but you said you can only do residential TIFs through 27?
Correct.
Yeah,
What do you have an opinion or have about whether that sunset provision will
I
set?
have not heard anything.
Do you think so?
I thought they did in the last session.
Extended? Okay.
Oh, really?
no,
Removed it.
Yeah, in the DLGF bill.
Okay.
Okay.
They made two changes. They removed the sunset and they extended the life of the bonds for 25 years.
Well, that's it. Makes it even better.
So now it's on par with the
That's even
traditions
better.
that- on how long you can go. Yeah, it's in the deal. I believe it's in the DLGF bill.
well, and the risk we run is the risk you run anytime you borrow money. If the clock stops like it did in 2008, a lot of developers like MI flat went out of business. The ones that didn't go out of business hung on by their fingernails for 5 years, 10 years, and didn't build on a single lot. We're still gonna have bond payments come due.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking against it, but you say, well, that'll never happen. Well, it did.
It did.
But so long as the development's in place, we're fine. It's only,
No, because the assessed value is not gonna go up if they're not building houses.
right.
Yeah.
But for the houses that are there.
Right.
Yeah, if you
Right.
get through that
Right.
5-year cycle or whatever, you're good.
Right,
It's when
yeah.
you start into the next.
And that's why I
Yeah,
said
yeah,
if the
got you,
music
I got
stops
you.
like it did in 2008,
Yeah.
And that's the primary risk, right? You
Right.
go out and borrow money before this money, you go out and borrow money and do a project before this is coming in, and the market crashes and everything comes to a halt. Next thing you know, you get these debt service payments and no revenue to pay for it. So then you have to do a tax on all of the current residents. I mean that right there is the risk.
and I've been saying for the decade since that happened, it's not like residential real estate's gonna go up by 90% again, as it did.
Been saying this since 2020.
Anyone on the council have any objection to moving forward?
Nope.
No.
Okay, I think that's the answer then. So whatever the next step needs to be, I think. So I know Dwayne's got a project on the table that he'd like to, we can crunch numbers based on that, I think.
Is that what you have set queued up?
No.
Oh. What's needed in order to identify and estimate costs of projects?
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at. I think it would be beneficial to go through and do a traffic study now and kind of assess, or at least get some insight from you guys right off the bat moving forward. Because I'm just Dwayne McCausland, what my numbers are may not be exactly accurate, and what I have estimated may be totally blown out of the water for what is truly needed based off of the traffic study.
Well, I can tell you right now, based on just driving around,
Well,
and I know you guys in the back will attest to this. Tracy Road and
Exactly.
31 is getting crazy.
Well,
So we
that's-
have to do something with that east-west roadway through there.
Exactly.
Because it's getting worse every day because everybody's using it as an east-west thoroughfare.
The 31 intersection on the west side is one of them. The rest of Tracy Road widening. Whiteland Road's gonna be an issue with the incoming traffic.
Especially leaving that 2 lanes and then going to that roundabout.
Yeah, well, and I also hate even bringing up the word traffic study, because we got numbers back on the previous subdivision. And I can tell you, I could sit out and look at that at the office window. Those traffic study numbers are a joke, in my opinion. But it is what it is, as certified traffic engineer. So, I do think that's the direction, even though I say that, that's the direction we need to go in order to assess what we have. But, you know, going on with the list of projects, we already had the traffic engineer do the study at the intersection of Sawmill and Tracy Road. Right in the report, recommended a roundabout for that area. Well, I mean, I can give you a rough idea on the cost. Steve could do the same thing based off of what the roundabout cost at Whiteland Road and Sawmill. There's just a myriad of things that are all involved in that process, right-of-way acquisition, things like that.
So I get the number piece, but what about identifying the actual improvements that are needed? Do we need help with that? I mean, is it just roads?
Well, there's stormwater improvements.
I was gonna
You're talking
say,
Whiteland
drainage?
Road, you're talking drainage improvements too.
Okay.
I'd say drainage improvements because of the road work and things like that.
Okay. But is that something that we can figure out internally, or do you need outside experts to come in and do an impact analysis of this proposed development?
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I do think that is a great idea to go through that.
Then in order to move forward from this meeting anyway, can it be about trying to figure out what is needed in the way of consultants, planners, I mean, what we need in the way of services
That makes sense.
to be able to identify what we need in the way of capital improvements.
Yeah,
To
that makes
then
sense.
be able to go to MI Homes and say, these are all the things that we're gonna need to do because of the impact that will be caused, and begin a conversation with them, and on the parallel track, I think, start checking boxes toward a redevelopment commission in the TIF district, and then marry the two together and figure out how much money needs to come from one and how much money is coming from the other. And I think as far as retaining any professionals, you are probably gonna want proposals from.
Yeah.
And is it all right if the boys and I at least identify who those candidates would be, and maybe even ask for proposals?
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. Okay. You good? Yep.
What, anything else? What else?
Add that MI Homes probably has a lot of information that we don't yet have, and so maybe having some additional discussions earlier than later with them, to try and get as much information and collaborate as much as you can. I would probably recommend that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'd be happy to engage and provide a fiscal TIF study for you guys. We have someone that we work with really well that does that as a licensed accountant, and we'd be happy to provide that for you on our behalf.
Okay.
Any other questions for Stephen before we let him get out of here? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. He,
Do you need another water? Boy, you suck that down.
I think I'll make it home.
All right.
Thank you, it looks enticing like that.
Thanks.
thanks, guys. Shoot, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him. Okay, Angela, you have any other new business?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So every 2 years we have an audit. In 2019, time, it was like a day or two later, they were like, when are you gonna get us these forms? And I'm like, it says 3 weeks. But, all that to say, they could show up any day now. And so I told Missy, and we're gearing up for that, but I wanted to let you guys know because there's usually involvement on my part at the initial meetings and the things like that, so. And then also for the department heads, we have to do those assets, field trips, and
Goody.
all
Take
that.
people's license or VIN numbers.
Right, so that'll be happening.
Okay. Anything else?
That is all.
Lee?
No, 749, this is old business, 749 Sawmill, had some work done on it. I hope it looks better to everybody.
It does.
Joe was great at, I know, I mean, I might bleeding anywhere. Joe was great at getting the notice to serve and talking with him and trying to coordinate with the property owner. And then this big thug got, boy, he jumped right on it. I don't know, did you help?
I carried some trash.
Okay. Well, when Dwayne became aware that this was going to get, boy, man, he jumped on it and got out there and organized it, and it got done, and it didn't seem so painful, and it wasn't as costly as we kind of thought, and so I hope it looks better, and we'll see what comes along next. I think at the Wits End property we're on a collision course for something similar. I think the clock's still ticking on what I gave them. They've been served with a notice that, or else, and so it's coming up. But they did a great job, and we got a good result, I think. And so I guess wanted, to make mention of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Looks better. Anything? Nope. John? Dennis?
Nope.
John?
No, sir.
Joe?
No.
Dwayne? Matt? Good. There's nothing under legislative business, so at this time, you guys have all stuck around forever. Meeting is open to the public. If you have a question or comment, we ask for your name and address for the record.
So my name is Victor from Orson Ware here last time. I work for Sloan Life and specifically the Whiteland agencies local to Indy. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more information. I know you guys already have Affleck, and bringing about change in a time where you guys are already dealing with so much is a big ask. So what I forgot to mention last time is we're not actually here to replace any insurance that you may have. We're more of a supplemental insurance. A lot of our clients actually have Affleck as well. Last time I came, I was really inexperienced. It was around my first 3 weeks. But in the time since then, I personally visited the town of Monrovia, and they're a happy partner with me now personally. They also had Affleck, and they were worried about change or what that would mean for their employees. A lot of them have had it for decades now. And I found that the biggest thing was trust. They never met me, didn't know my face, the employees didn't know me, and that was a big reason of why they weren't interested. So I just, asked to be given the opportunity to be able to at least gain the trust of the department heads or their employees, to at least provide to them the 2 free benefits. If nobody remembers what they were, the first one was an accidental death protection. It grants $3,000 of protection to the insured, $3,000 to the spouse, and $1,000 per dependent child, as well as a no-cost discount card. It's kind of like a GoodRx card. It provides 10 to 85% discount on vision, hearing, prescription drugs, and chiropractic care. So at least, if you guys wouldn't be opposed to me meeting and giving the employees those if they didn't want to, move forward with anything else, and at least build trust by giving them a face behind the name.
When you didn't have your business cards last time, have you gotten any now?
So I haven't been experienced enough in the company to be able to get my own business cards yet.
Okay. If you would be willing to do this, because if you would give your contact information to Joe and Matt and Dwayne, let them talk with their employees, and then if there's interest, let them get back with you. I did contact 2 of the references that you gave me. One did not know you personally. They said they dealt with a lady named Emily, I think was her name.
I believe Emily was previous.
And it was one of the contractors that you told me about. I forget which one. But they didn't know you personally, but they knew the company, and they were happy with the service you provided. So if you don't mind, if you can leave them your information and let them kind of get with their employees. Like I said, when we talked before, I was not aware. I thought we had Aflac in the past and that did away with them, and we did not.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I did do some legwork on the references you provided, so that was helpful.
And if I'm able to speak with them when I give them my contact information, the next step to be able to gain trust before anything moves forward is kind of like a group overview with like the department heads or employees.
If they choose to do that, I don't have a problem with it, but you know, that we're gonna leave that decision up to them, if you don't mind. So, okay?
Just one more question, would I also be able to do the group overview with the clerk treasurer if possible, like on a given day, so that they know more of the presentation and have more information that they can forward, since I don't have a business card?
Honestly, I don't know that that's necessary, only because the clerk treasurer doesn't have any say-so over what programs we have. She just pays the bills.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that, I mean, if you want to leave your info with the department heads and let them determine what's best for their employees and talk to their employees about it. Okay?
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Being no other business, we are adjourned. I didn't know this wrote red.